Okay, hello everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm still setting up a little bit. I'm going to let people join in and trickle in a little bit. This should be a fairly short session, but yeah, I'll wait a couple of minutes to do the introductions, just making sure that everything's perfect. Can you see my screen? Yes. Is there a way for me to hide this a little bit for myself? Just going to leave it here for now. Someone, I don't know if you can see me move this, but okay. Right, so I think we can kind of start. I have my notes here just to make sure that I go through everything that I want to go through. All right, perfect. Okay, cool. So welcome everyone. It is a kind of a private affair. This little training session. I've kind of handpicked a few of you, all of you. I think all of you are here to go through this training session on the new conversation builder. The conversation builder is going through a pretty massive overhaul in general, and we are about to release this, I think in 1 week or in 2 weeks, I can't recall now. But I wanted to go through with some of you guys who are using the conversation builder a lot, because I thought it'd be good for kind of feedback and then just to kind of prepare you for the release. This video is at the moment was invite only, so there's only you having access to this. It wasn't public invitation or anything like that, or a public webinar. But this video is going to be released to everyone on YouTube later on. So if you do need to duck out and you need to go and do something else, don't worry too much. You'll have access to it as well. But yeah, I wanted to go through this with you. I'm quite excited to show you the new builder. I think it's a very exciting kind of change in the way that we're building conversations. Should make building conversations quite quick, a lot quicker, hopefully, and just more pleasing to the eye, a lot more, I would say, adhering to the best practices of what it would look like to build a conversation. So let's dive right in. The first thing that you'll see is now I'm on the builder page, or kind of the overview page where all of my conversations are, and obviously you'll see that there is a bit of a rejig of the way this page looks. Now, instead of having a table of all of the conversations, they're all kind of in these little cards, but really everything is the same as it was before. So you have the tags here at the top. Default, fallback, live chat, etc. Each card is obviously one conversation. You can click the view button to go and view your conversation. You can lock the conversation just like you could before. Once it's locked, you can't, or you obviously cannot click the view button anymore. And then to unlock, you just need to unlock the conversation. So really, it's all the same. You can filter by tags, etc. It looks a little bit different. It does have, that I want to point out, the beta label at the top here, showing that this is the brand new version of this conversation builder. And hopefully, if there is nothing that needs to be reported, then perfect. If you do find some issues, please raise them to us, and we'll go as fast as possible to resolve them. Okay, so the first thing I kind of want to go through is just maybe open a conversation to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to open the human fallback conversation. Okay, so there's a lot of things here that we can have a look at. And the first thing I want to show you is here in the bottom right. This is something new as well that you've probably never seen before. If I click on it, what it shows you is these little walkthrough examples of what's happening, what's new in the app. This is something that we're aiming to introduce now with every single new release. Basically a way to educate people within the app. So if you're ever lost and you see this little gift in the bottom right, this little gift icon, you can click on it and it's just going to show you, what's new inside this particular part of the application. So that's quite cool to know. It's kind of always there. Okay, so this is the conversation. So this is the human fallback conversation. It doesn't really matter what the conversation is. What matters is obviously we're going to just have a quick look at what it looks like. The first thing that you'll notice is that I can move the conversation now, and I can navigate through the conversation in a kind of click and drag and click and explore way. The second thing you'll probably notice is I cannot read anything. It's very small, and as you can see here in the bottom left, I'm at 28% zoom, and so we now have this kind of zoom in and out feature here that allows us to really hone in on a specific part of the conversation. So what I want to do here is I basically want to just show you how to read the conversation builder, the new conversation builder. It's still very much the same principle. So you start at the top and at the bottom, although that is the way that the conversations will be built initially. You can actually do whatever you want with that. We'll have a look at that later on. So again, human fallback conversation doesn't really matter. We have the trigger here at the top. We have the first step of the conversation, and then we obviously have all of these lines that direct the conversation down to the next step of the conversation. So If someone says yes, we have this little line here that goes, when message says yes, this transition now is written here, which sends the user down to this path here, conversation step here, doesn't need help. Would you please tell me what your email address is? So this is this one. If the user says what their email address and their email address is actually correct, they'll move on to the next step, etc., etc. So you know how the conversation builder works. So basically the way it looks is very similar to what it was before. It's just a little bit more elegant, a little bit easier to read, a little bit less of left side scrolling and that sort of stuff. The second thing that we kind of introduced here that you may have noticed if you have your, if you're paying attention is we have some purple and some red lines. The purple lines are lines that represent transitions from one step to the next. So those are the lines that you would always see before in the normal conversation builder. Before, when the classic conversation builder, you would have these lines going from one step to the next, and those are the purple line. Here we have a red line. Now, what does the red line mean? The red line basically means a validation. So previously, when you were building conversations and there was a validation step, you would not see it represented within the builder because it just wouldn't really work visually. Now we actually have a way to represent that. So again, if we go through this conversation, so someone does need help, and then we ask for their email address, and we obviously require for them to move on to the next step. So in this purple line, we require them to actually give us an email address. It has to be an email address. It needs to go through validation. If they do, they can obviously move on to the next step. But if they don't, which is represented here in this red line, if they don't, when the message is not an email address, we send them this message, please enter a valid email address, and then purple line back into this step of the conversation. So again, this is really cool. I think this is really, really important. In the previous builder, this wasn't represented, which was sometimes a bit of a nightmare. But now this is actually very visible. So yeah, I'm quite excited about this. Okay, the last couple of points I had were obviously zooming in and out. So we just looked at that. And then the final thing is obviously click, drag, and drop. This is probably the main reason why we did this change in the conversation builder, is to allow you to really organize your conversation in the way that you like. And so here, for instance, this step of the conversation, which is here in the top right, I could actually move it here. And I could just kind of place it wherever I'd like. This works for steps like this one. This is a step. And as you can see, obviously the lines follow suit. It works with transitions, so these kind of conditionals between the two steps. So if I want to move this up here, I can do so. It works for the trigger. I can put the trigger all the way up here if I wanted to, etc., etc. So this kind of interaction is very, very user-friendly. You'll get used to it in 2 seconds, and it just makes things so much easier when you're creating a really big conversation, because you can really organize it the way you'd like. So hopefully this is not too many surprises. This is a pretty, it's not an intense conversation, but it is a pretty big conversation. It's a good example to kind of get your head wrapped around it. If you still have the original human fallback conversation in your builder, I suggest you go and have a look at it, because it will allow you to have all of these steps set up. All right, cool. So obviously the next thing I want to do is just create a conversation. It might just make sense to create a conversation together. So I'm going to move my head down to the bottom left, and I'm going to create conversation. So creating conversations is the same process. The initial process is very, very similar. So you just hit this kind of plus conversation in the top right, give your conversation a name, again, conversation, give your conversation a description. This conversation will help us learn the new conversation builder. You can add tags if you'd like, and then you set up your trigger. For this one, I'm just going to do the usual message equals new convo. Save this. So this so far is exactly the same process. You're immediately thrown into the conversation. The new conversation builder is there, and obviously the first step is created already. So like we discussed, we can move this around if I wanted to, and just thought, this looks a bit weird. I'm going to make it a lot smaller or something like that, or I'm going to make it top right, etc., etc. Okay, so same principle, drag and drop things around, etc. So we have the first link, the first step of the conversation. What I'd like to do is obviously edit this first step of the conversation. What we can do is create maybe a lead generation conversation, something like that. So to edit this first step, edit the message, edit the name of the step, etc., we have these 3 helpful dots in the top right. If I click this, This gives me a few options. So I can edit the step, which is going to allow us to edit kind of the things around the step. So the name of the step, for instance, or whether or not it's a sensitive step. I can edit the response, which allows us to edit, obviously, what the message says. We can test the step, which we'll look at later on, and test in advanced as well. And then we can just delete it. So let's have a look at edit the step. So edit the step, like I said, you can just change the name. So this would be welcome or asking name, for instance. I can make this step sensitive or not. We're not going to for now, and I can just save this. Okay, so as you can see, asking the name here has changed. Next thing I can do is I can edit the response. So if I click this, it's going to bring up this view that you're quite familiar with, which allows us to just edit the copy here. So I can change the message type, I can change the composer, etc. All I'm going to do is, what is your first name? I can change that, and I can save it. Perfect. I'm not going to obviously delete a step. You know what deleting a step is, and then testing the steps we'll have a look at later on. So the functionalities within the steps themselves are very much the same as they were before. They're just a lot simpler. So before you had this massive slide in with all of these options, and it was all a bit all over the place for you to figure out what to do. Here it's super simple. Just want to edit a response, just edit response, change the copy, hit save, and you're done. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is how to create a new step. So again, before you had these kind of big plus buttons to add new steps. Now we have something a lot simpler. So we have these little bubbles here at the top and at the bottom of the step. If I click this bubble here, as you can see, as I move, I'm not clicking the thing. I'm just kind of dragging it around. This dotted line, or I guess not really dots, is kind of following my mouse here. Basically, what I can do with this is I can drop it anywhere I'd like, but with another click, and immediately create a new step. So this new step is going to be email address. So I'm going to ask the user for their email address, and I'm going to click continue. And again, I can write the copy. Great. I can type to meet you. What is your email address? Perfect. And I can save this. Next page allows me to actually set up the transition. So again, very, very simple. This new view of the transitions is also a lot more intuitive in that it represents on the right what it's going to do. So on the right, we see what the previous step is and what the next step is, which transition we're actually working on. Very, very good reminder when you have a really big conversation and you don't really remember what you're working on, or you just went to make coffee and come back and you're like, oh, which transition am I working on again? You have it here on the right. Okay, so I just asked for the name. As you can see, the question was, what's your first name? I don't really want to do any validation or anything like that. So all I want is the user to send me some message, and I'm happy. So I can save this. All right, and as you can see, the step has been created. So the step has been thrown really far down the page for some reason, but it's no problem because I can move anything I want in the way that I want. So I can just move that back up and reorganize all of this. If I wanted to, I could just kind of take it to the right and just have a little play. If I wanted to, again, here, create kind of a branching or anything like that, I could hit this button again, drag and drop it again, and it would create another step, etc., etc. So I can create as many of those flowing steps as I need. Okay, so that's pretty much the new functionality in terms of building the conversation here. Hopefully this all makes sense. So you can navigate as much as you like, you can move, you can zoom in and out, you can move every single component of the conversation in and out that you like. And the process itself is a lot simpler, because the only thing you need to really focus on is the name of the step and the content within the step. So if you wanted to just create a conversation just made of when a message is sent, move to the next step, and a bit of text, you would build this in seconds with this new conversation builder. Okay, so obviously those of you who use, well, it should be all of you, using the conversation builder for more complex things than just pure text-based conversations, you'll realize that we're missing all of the cool stuff. So we're missing the variables, we're missing the metrics, we're missing step triggers, we're missing all that kind of stuff. So where is all of this stuff? Well, we've neatly arranged it into what we call the bank. The bank is here in the top right of your screen. It's this kind of little, I don't really know what that is. It's kind of a little plus sign, I guess. If you open this up, what you can see is the bank of blocks that are available for you to actually enrich your conversation. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit or move down a little bit. So what do we have? We have steps. So steps is pretty simple. Step is just adding a new step into the conversation. We just did it using this little bubble here, but what we could do is drag and drop a step into the Canva. As you can see here, new step. Hello. Save this, and here we are. The step is here. As you can see, the step just appeared somewhere in the page. And as you can see, it has this little helpful warning sign that says, this step is not currently reachable by anything because it's not connected to anything in the conversation. As you can see, it's completely orphaned. And so what I would have to do is, if I wanted to connect it to this one, for instance, I would have to click, drag, and connect the two. Yeah. Like that. So it shows us the conversation again, but we're not going to do that. So I can delete the step. All right, so that's the first thing that we have in the back. The second things we have are transition blocks. So those blocks particularly get assigned within transitions between two steps. So those are variables and metrics. So if you want to say, let's say, the first name of this person after you've collected it, this will obviously be done in transition. It can only happen after the user has actually answered the question. So I can grab this variable, and as you can see, I can drop it inside this transition here between the step at which I've asked the question and the next step in the conversation. So I've dropped this in here, and I can go and find a variable called first name, save this, and here we are. It's right here. If I wanted to delete it, I can click on it, delete, confirm, done. Same thing with metrics. So this again can only happen in transition when actually the user has taken the steps that they need to take for us to increase that metrics, for instance, giving us their email address. So I can do the same. So click, drag, put it into the transition, select a metric, interested in website creation, for instance, save, and here we are. Okay, so if I wanted to add more, I could obviously add more. I could add another one here, etc., etc. So I can delete all of them as well. Confirm. All right, so those are transition blocks. And then finally, we have step blocks. So step blocks are blocks that actually go inside the step of the conversation. So those are things like integrations, email, actions, triggers, and validation. So very, very simple. Integrations, I don't have any integration set up in this account, but if I wanted to, at this step of the conversation, I could go and pick an integration and go and pull that in, or put whatever it is, kind of integration you have set up. Email. I could go and do the same. I could say at this step of the conversation, I really want to send an email. So here we are. Actions. I could go and find at this specific step, go and find and create a ticket or set all of that up at this step of the conversation. Triggers would be something else that would trigger this specific conversation. So yeah, we could trigger this conversation based on one path that leads to it, or I could trigger it in a completely different way. So I could do this as well. And validation, like we've just seen. So I could have email address here. I'm asking for that. If the message is not an email address, it's going to go into a different step. So hopefully that makes sense. This kind of section here is for all of the things that you need to add into the conversation to enrich it. And so what we've done really is slimline or streamline the creation of the basic creation of the bot. So you can really build that really, really quickly. And then when you know what else needs to be appended onto every single step or transition, you can open this bank of blocks and drag them into it with really, with a lot of ease. All of it is very visual as well. So you've obviously noticed as I'm dragging things around that we have areas that are colored in red and areas that are colored in purple in this instance. So the red obviously says I cannot drop anything into it. So if I try to drop something here, it will just go back into my bank and just not do anything. As I hover over something that I can actually click or I can actually drop it into it, it becomes purple, which is why here I can actually do this. This works for everything. So I cannot drop a step inside a step, but I can drop a step inside the canvas, for instance. I cannot drop a trigger anywhere in the canvas except inside the step, etc., etc. So this is just visual indications of what you can and cannot do with it. All right, so we've gone through all of that. I think the last thing I want to show you is how to actually demo the conversation. So let's create another final step. So let's do, what is your email address? So we're going to do another step. Thank you. And I'm going to say just thank you. All right, cool. And I'm going to do when the message is an email. So I can only transition when the message is an email. All right, so my message is all the way down here again. I'm just going to go and grab it, organize it a little bit. Perfect. All right, so we have a really simple three-step conversation. Very simple. There isn't really much for you to test here. You could just read it, and you'd be quite comfortable that this is doing what it is that you like it to do. But there might be instances where you're building a really large conversation, and what you'd like to do is test it. We obviously have this area in the platform, in the demo area, which is very good to go and test things, except that it always throws you at the very beginning of your interaction with the bot. So it doesn't really throws you specifically inside a conversation or anything like that. It really throws you at the very start of the conversation of the interaction with the bot here, like, welcome to our new chatbot. Whereas here, what I'd like to do really is test this very specific conversation. I've been building this for 15 minutes, half an hour, 4 days, and I really want to test this conversation, nothing else. So what I can do now is I can click this little button in the top right, and I can head over to demo. Demo is going to take me through this very specific conversation, and I can go through the entire conversation here. So I can say, Alex. He's going to say, what is your email address? I can say something random like this. It's going to think a little bit, and then it says, you know, this is not the right thing for you to do. Oh, there's no validation, so it just throws me into something else. You know, whatever. This is the purpose of this is not really specific, but what it does here is that it does allow you to test the whole conversation within the conversation page that you're working on, which is really cool. The other thing that you can do, which we discussed briefly at the start, or I mentioned briefly at the start, is these test steps. Again, this is just a way for you to test quicker and learn quicker from your mistakes, maybe, and make sure that everything's working okay. So let's say this was a 14-step conversation, very complex. And I really want to make sure that this validation here, which I didn't set up, so it's going to make an error, that this validation works. And so what I could do is I could hit this and I could say test step. And it's going to take me straight away to this step of the conversation. As you can see, it didn't take me at the start of the conversation. It didn't take me at the start of the bot altogether. It took me at the start of this very specific step. And so if I say, you know, alex@ubisend.com, it takes me to the next step here. So I managed to skip everything else. I don't have to go through the entire conversation and, you know, enter all sorts of fake information, etc. I can literally just start the test at the step that I'd like, which is very powerful. Cool. So hopefully this gave you a pretty good overview of this update. This has been somewhat long in the making. It's a pretty major reskin of the way that we actually build conversation and allow you to build conversation, and hopefully will make you build conversation a lot faster, make things a little bit more fun as well, because you can drag and drop and have all of these kind of lines and things like that that you can connect. It's just a bit more dynamic and interactive. And then the additional features like the demo inside the bot, or being able to reorganize your conversation altogether, the visual aspect of the validation, all of that hopefully will also create a much better experience for you building bots on the ubisend platform. If you have any questions, as usual, we're available for any kind of questions that you might have. Just reach out to your account manager or your partnership manager. We'll be more than happy to help. This video is going to go live. I think it's on the 24th, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's the 17th. But yeah, it will go live at some point. So if you need to rewatch it, or if you need to refamiliarize yourself with it, don't worry too much. It'll be out there. And yeah, reach out if you have any questions. Hopefully you love it, and let us know what you think. All right, bye everyone. Thank you for attending. See you very soon. Bye-bye.